Welcome to the demonstration of the electron transport chain. The goal here is to show students how proton motive force is generated by the chain. Students start off picking up cards representing different redox carriers and their potentials. They line themselves up in the membrane, which is the front of the classroom, the blackboard representing outside the cell, the classroom the inside of the cell. Students are then asked to line themselves according to their redox potentials from more negative on the left to more positive on the right. So now they learn how redox carriers align themselves so that electrons can be passed on from one carrier to the next. We start off with NADH, which carries 2 electrons and 2 protons, represented by 2 batteries and 2 golf balls. Now NADH can pass on its electrons and protons to the next carrier, which happens to accept both electrons and protons, so that's a simple enough exchange. But what's going to happen when an electron is passed on to a carrier that only accepts electrons? When that happens, the protons have to be removed and passed to the outside of the cell, so we place them on the blackboard to indicate that we're now generating proton motive force. We're generating more protons outside the cell than inside the cell. Now we can pass those electrons on to the next carrier, which happens to need electrons and protons, so now they need to get their protons from the inside of the cell. So now again we're beginning the process of translocation. Protons from the inside of the cell go into the membrane. Then when we pass on electrons to the next carrier, which only accepts electrons, we now pass more protons outside the cell, generating more proton motive force. So every time this happens, we make proton motive force. So this continues until our terminal electron acceptor, which in this case is oxygen. Oxygen gets electrons, and protons then come from the inside the cell. The terminal oxidase enzyme can also translocate additional protons outside the cell. So in this whole process of the electron transport chain, proton motive force is generated by translocating protons outside the cell.